Hello, welcome to the Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. This is the Sigmar Stat Center. Today we're going to be looking at a load of different events. In fact, it's our busiest weekend for the new GHB so far. 379 players playing across 6 countries, which is really exciting. We're still too early into the meta and into the game to produce enough stats, or stats that I would feel confident enough to talk about as representing the game. But there's probably some big takeaways, things like one drops being really good because the battle plans work really well for that. But we're going to go through all these lists now and talk about them. There's some big surprises. We've got a Nighthaunt list going 5-0. Cruel Boys are doing really well. Sublight Gravelord's doing well, of course. OCR Bone Reaper's doing well. And Seraphon doing well as well. So lots to talk about. We've got events from Czech, USA, England, Norway, Sweden, and Spain, which is super fun. So hope you enjoy the show. Shout out to Rob and Ziggy as always for helping me do the stats. And I hope you enjoy what we do. The first event we're going to look at is the Champion of the Black Oil 3, hot off the heels of Champion of the Black Oil 2, organised by Jakub Obrozlek, and it was being held in the Czech Republic, which is fun. We had 22 different players playing, and we had no 5-0s, and we had a range of 4-1s. Lucas Plagner running his Sylvaneth Gnarlroot, Pavel with his Cruel Boys, Ivo with his Seraphon, Rene with his Osiarch Bone Reapers. Okay, so let's talk about the list a little bit, because there's some fun stuff in there. Sylvaneth list in Gnarlroot is fun. Tree Lord Ancient, Drycha, Spirit of Durthu, Warsong Revenant, and Celestant Prime. 2 units of minimum battle line, Tree Revs, and then the Spiteswarm Hive in the list as well. Spiteswarm Hive, super useful in this army, obviously, because it adds pluses to charge, and that's going to work really well with the new hashtag Primal Dice, which means you're more likely to be able to get the casting value on the Spiteswarm Hive and get it off. But we're also in a world where your opponent can use those Primal Dice to try and shut down your spells as well, which is a problem, of course. There's also a unit of Dryads, I should mention. The other thing to talk about is the Hoarfrost spell that's in here as well. Now, this list isn't too dissimilar to lists that we saw in the old GHB, mainly because it does lots of AoE damage at range. The Warsong Revenant's able to cast a spell through trees at range and do AoE mortal wounds, and the Celestant Prime can pick a point on the board and do AoE mortal wounds at range as well. This means it overrides the new Battle Scroll update to Lookout Sir, where characters can't be targeted outside of 12 inches if they're on foot, if they are mounted, and they're under 9 wounds. However, if they are mounted and still under the 9 wound cap, or 9 wounds or less, then -1 to hit. So a lot of those support characters that we know and love, War Chanters, you name them, like Grot Shamans, etc., are untargetable outside of 12 inches. So this means that you effectively get to skip that and still keep applying that damage. Other than that, the list will just work the same. The thing I really like is Drycha, being able to put Hoarfrost on one of her melee weapons to give her a lot of rend feels fun. There we go. Also a lot of 12-inch jokes. Okay. The Cruel Boys list, really fun. In Grinning Blades. So again, can't be seen outside of 12 inches. But that's the whole army this time. Now, a lot of people in love with Gobsprak, the mouth of Gork, the mouth of the god of destruction. There's a killer boss on Great Gnashtooth, 2 Swamp Caller Shamans, and then 2 Snatcher Boss on Sludgerakers. Snatcher Boss and Sludgerakers do some incredible melee damage, and they also buff the units around them. So they're legitimate and very fast threats to watch out for. Gut Rippers on the front line, Hogrot Slitters for a screen, and some Manskewer Bolt Boys, which are still criminally cheap in this list. They've really benefited from becoming so cheap. They were always very cheap. They're very, very cheap, but they're just incredibly unsurvivable. They are the glass cannon of this game. So Gobsprak for shutting down enemy casting and doing a lot of mortal wound damage to the enemy, and then the list works the same as it previously did anyway. It's quite interesting seeing Cruel Boys in the meta. I don't think that they will maintain in the meta because they have all of the weaknesses that they did previously. You have a lot of online commentators, obviously, making all sorts of nonsense statements to try and fill you with self-confidence. But the 30% win rate, 40% win rate that they've had for going on nearly 3 years now really should be the cold, icy shower on your hopes and dreams. Seraphon, Starborn, Fangs of Sotek. This should be FAQ'd or, in my opinion, soft banned for a while. Also went 4-1. Ashroth, Bannerbearer, Skink Starseer, Slan Starmaster, and a Croak. Chat, YouTube commentators especially, a lot of you got really salty last week when I talked about this. I've been talking about Age of Sigmar stats and reviewing lists for 6 years now. I've played when army lists have had a 70% win rate. The reason I call for a soft ban on this until it gets FAQ'd is because it just isn't cool, dude. Doing 30 to 50 mortal wounds in a magic phase just isn't cool, and that's what it does. And also, this list, you weren't here for it, but while I was reading this out on stream, I read this list out before I looked at this list. I already knew what this list is. When the command trait is just so universal that you see here, the artifact is so universal here, and the loadout is so identical, it's really sad, and you're not really helping with list diversity. You got Geminids, also credible for shutting down OBR. Probably OBR being an issue right now is no longer an issue because of this 50-point spell. So Geminids is the winner, and Suffocating Gravetide for taking out Hordes. I just spoke about this. I did an Endless Spell tier show. It's up on YouTube if you want to go check it out. These are the two correct loadout. These are the two correct spells to take in the game right now. Your other spell is a little bit of a question. Could be Maelstrom. That seems like it's sensible. But Geminids of Orgish is great into any army, but it defeats OBR immediately. And Suffocating Gravetide will stop any kind of zombie horde spam. Because it just does. It can do each different unit. And then somehow this list can fit Gotrek in, which is amazing. Gotrek also got a bonus in this GHB because you can now not target him outside of 12 inches because he counts as being on foot and below 9 wounds. Therefore, you can't shoot him at range, which is one of the few ways to deal with him, unless you can do a ton of different damage. So there we go. There. And then finally, our OCR Bone Reapers list is Null Myriad. A good thing to point out for everyone at home. Is Null Myriad. Null Myriad are as 2+ spell ignore for an army, but Catacross doesn't have the Null Myriad keyword, and so you cannot get a spell ignore on Catacross in Null Myriad, so please don't play it that way, otherwise you're doing it wrong. Double Bone Shaper for 2 heals, 3 heals if you include Catacross. Again, YouTube commentators like to point out that it does require a 3+ to return any of the Immortis Guard. I have said this on multiple different shows, but again, if you need me to be clear, they can heal up to 4 different Immortis Guard in a hero phase, but it does require 4 3-ups to be rolled and an additional 3-up to roll one of the other 3-ups, which math-wise makes it a 5-up. So while it can, it most likely will only do 1 or 2. That doesn't obviously also include rallies. Immortis Guard are 5 wounds each, so you could put 20 wounds back into a unit. You're more likely to put 10, but if you do a rally first, you can put quite a few back in, which is nice. And then we've got Kavalos Death Riders, and then we've got 10 Mortek Guard and a Soul Stealer Carry-On. Now, one of the things to really mention here is when you don't have Arcan, you end up, ladies and gentlemen, just with loads more units in your list. But Arcan's really great, 370 points, as pointed out by Leo. Really, really good. I like him, but I think you end up resource lighter, so you've got to be a little bit smarter about your play. In this situation, you're resource heavier, which is a bonus as well. So yeah, good. That's our first event. Now we're going to go look at our biggest event of the week. The next event we're going to look at is an amazing event. I was there last year, and it's super fun. It's the Basement Wargamers event, Summer Slaughter, and it's organised. Sean Feather organises it, and it's over in PA, Stowe, PA, in fact, if you ever want to get yourself over to Stowe, which is a pretty nice little area in Pennsylvania. And it was our largest event over the weekend. In fact, this was in the USA. There was 113 players playing, and combined with our other 2 USA events, Midwest Meltdown and the FLG Outlaw GT, over 200 players playing Age of Sigmar in the USA this weekend alone at 2-day events. So that doesn't include 1-dayers and anything else that ended up just not getting recorded in those local events. Basement Wargamers got a really great little logo there, which you'd love to see. And another thing that I really like about what they do is they do nice artwork, like a gig. So this is something actually that I've started to do with my events. We've got loads of events at the TSN Arena here in Nottingham in the UK. One of my events that's coming up, for instance, is King Gizzard and the Blizzard Wizards, which I'm quite proud of. I quite like the idea of doing like gig posters for events. And the Summer Slaughter 2023 one obviously looks like a gig poster. So I'm a big fan of that. That looks really legit. So I do like the idea of going down the gig poster route for Age of Sigmar events. So let's make that happen, which is cool. Anyway, 113 players, some of the better players knocking around the world, actually. So at least some of the most consistent. So it's unsurprising that our 350s, at least 2 of them, we know really well. So Caleb Walters of the bottom table bullies has done incredibly well, again going 5-0 with his Disciples of Tzeentch and Guild of Summoners. Ted Adams with his Ossiarch Bone Reapers in Null Myriad, and then Nate Trentinelli with a truly mind-bending Nighthaunt list in Emerald Host. And then you've got loads of really well-known 4-1s, including winner of LVO and wonderful human Joanne Noah Singh, and we'll talk about all those in a moment. But let's just look at the list. Let's look at the list right now. First list we're going to look at is Caleb's. He's running Guild of Summoners, so don't forget that means you summon Lords of Change. It's our most popular sub-faction for Tzeentch last year, and they ended up, or in the last GHB, and they ended up with a really good win rate in the last GHB as well. So it's an incredibly good army already going into the new GHB. New GHB, a lot of their heroes and casters, so their wizards, are not targetable outside of 12 inches thanks to the change to Lookout Sir. So maybe that's made Tzeentch even better, and because they were good before, being better is pretty strong. Then he's got a Magister on Disc of Tzeentch, and he's bonded to a Kronspine Incarnate, so they're bonded. Now, there's actually something really interesting to focus on there, and that's previously you used to use Destiny Dice to make the Magister explode himself, so that the Kronspine Incarnate will become wild. You no longer have to do that anymore. Instead, you could use the spell from the spell lore or from the GHB spell lore to unbind yourself from the Incarnate, meaning it could go wild. So there's a nice little combo there. Then there's an Ogroid Thermitage in the list with Merciless Blizzard and Arcane Suggestion. Arcane Suggestion's got the potential at 18 inches to make it so you can't receive command abilities, but also, and importantly, reduce your save by 1. It's pretty massive because we're going to talk about some other combos for this in a moment. Then a Lord of Change, and then obviously Merciless Blizzard if you just want to do a ton of mortal wounds. Lord of Change with Demon Spark to get some extra fate points early. And then Ghost Mist and Flaming Weapons making a combat monster, and then a Magister with Rupture and Merciless Blizzard. And again, that Magister is using Rupture to unbind the Incarnate. And then you've got Carrick Acolytes, 2 units of 10, and a unit of Zangor. Now, Zangor are a hot pick, I think, in this GHB, specifically because using Hoarfrost on them, when they charge in, they can get up to 50 attacks. So being able to give them Ren 3 on Hoarfrost is massive. But where it gets even more exciting, I think, is the fact that with Arcane Suggestion, you can make that be Ren 4, or if you would like, you could use the Purple Son of Sheesh, which is in this list, to reduce an enemy's armor save down, so up to Ren 5, meaning you'll just blow through units with 50 attacks. Kronspine Incarnate of Gur in the list as well. Obviously, we know what Incarnate does, can't retreat. It's really good for a Tzeentch army, means that your opponent isn't going to be attacking your castle really early. And then some Carrick Acolytes in the list as well. Purple Sun and Umbral Spell Portal and the Burning Sigil of Tzeentch, which is the spell. It's always incredible that Caleb is able to do so well with this army. It really is. He is a very unique player, and he just has to be brilliant with this list. He's been playing it consistently, religiously, and the fact that he is just consistently doing so well with it, no matter the meta, no matter the event, no matter where he is just a real note to how well he must play this. Over to Ted Adams. He's running Guild of Summoners. Not Guild of Summoners, sorry. He's running Null Myriad in Ossiarch Bone Reapers. He's got Catacross, a Bone Shaper, and a Soul Mason. Then he's got a unit of 10 Death Riders, and then 2 units of 6 Immortus Guard, and another unit of Death Riders. So Death Riders in there for the battle tactic, which is super useful. And the Immortus Guard, again, a defensive front line with a 2-up armor save thanks to Catacross, a 5-up ward save. You can heal a lot of them. From in this list, you could heal up to 3, of course, obviously, YouTube thugs. You have to roll dice to make that happen, but you can roll up to 3 back in, which is 15 wounds, not including rallies, which would add even more into a unit. And they're just really good. They're a great castle army. They fight really well. They hit the mid-board, and they battle it out on objectives, and you're hard pushed to beat against them, which is rough. And then finally, Nate Trentinelli. Now, I'm just going to straight up ask Nate to come on the show and talk about this list and talk about his thoughts on this army anyway. But Nate's running Nighthaunt in Emerald Host. Emerald Host has got a really fun sub-faction ability where you pick D3+1 units on the enemy in the enemy army at the start of the battle, and then every battle round they'll take D3 mortal wounds on a 2+. This is really useful for obviously getting rid of those range characters. Kind of a running theme now, it seems, if you look at some of the other army lists, where you're, again, skipping that lookout surchange and making it so that you can do all of those mortal wound damage into those units, even if you can't see them, which is really nice, and then keep hitting those support characters in the enemy army, which are going to be bringing in a lot of their battle tactics. And then there's and then to kind of buddy up with that, crazily, there's a unit of 10 Craven Throne Guard. So these are the crossbows, which is so rare to see these in a list anyway, but they are very, very cheap. And then 2 units of 5 Craven Throne Guard as well. So that's 20 Craven Throne Guard. They shoot 12 inches, and they've got 2 shots each. So that unit of 10 is going to shoot 20 shots, force 4s, rend 1, damage 1. But they can shoot units that they can't see. And then there's 2 units of 5 as well. So up to 40 shots. So a lot of those support characters potentially going down very, very early. Then there's 2 units of 4 Mimron Banshees, and these feel amazing. Units wholly within 12 inches can ignore endless spells. Well, not ignore them. Basically, they get another unbind on top of the unbinds you're already trying to roll. So basically, into a spellcasting army, devastating, these Mimron Banshees. And they shut down. They're probably a better shutdown than Khorne, I would argue. You don't get the bonuses you get with Khorne, but I think it's a better shutdown. He's got Ragnar the Grimhaler, Guardian Souls. Guardian Souls can heal up to D6 to a unit, which is really nice. And Ragnar the Grimhaler can add +3 to cast some spells, which is really good. But I think the super clever trick in here is the Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed. He's an Arcane Tome, so he becomes a wizard, which means he can go and Laquan the Soul Seeker, which is the endless spell, which moves a unit, and then that unit can move after and charge. And the Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed is really fast. Then he's got this amazing ability. When he takes damage, he does mortal wound damage in AoE to units within 6 inches. So it's like an AoE damage spell, or like damage ability, sorry. So he takes damage, and every unit within 6 inches on a 4+ takes a mortal wound. He also gains wounds, and he also gains wounds to his characteristic based on how many models. Like every time he slays a model in combat, in a combat phase. So if he's been in 4 combat phases and he's slaying a model in all 4, he will add up to 4 to his wounds characteristic, meaning that if he takes 9 wounds in combat, he's going to roll 9 dice, and for every 4 up, every unit within 6 inches is going to take a mortal wound. It's a lot of AoE mortal wound damage spell, on top of the shooting coming from the crossbows, the sub-faction ability, and then finally, he's got the Mortalis Terminexus, which is an endless spell which sets up within 12, moves 8 inches, and affects units within 6 inches, and every unit within 6 inches on a 2+ takes D3 mortal wounds. So now he's doing AoE mortal wound damage. So he's killing characters at range. He's shooting at loads of units and screens, charging in these bombs, throwing endless spells in and doing the bombs, just doing loads of damage. It's a really interesting list. You do wonder how... Oh, and then finally, you're like, well, Rob, how does he stop from getting hit back? He's got a unit of 10 Hex Wraiths, and then 3 units of 5 Hex Wraiths, which are really, really fast, and you could definitely use these to pin units in, because they've got good armor save, because you can't rend it, so 4-up armor save. They can have a good ward save as well, because they can use command ability for a 5-up ward save, and they could just pin an enemy unit in. There's also a spell to make them -1 to wound, so they can be really tough to deal with and take out of the game as you're being hit by AoE damage, chip damage, shooting damage, and loads of other stuff. It's a really interesting list. Incredible to see it play. Really, really fun. In the 4 and the draw category, we've got Jiwan Noah Singh with Soulblight, Gravelords, Legion of Night. And it's a nice little cheeky list, a little bit different to what we've seen previously. So he's running the Legion of the Night. Whoa! He's got Manfred von Karstein in his list, just a big fighting monster as a support character who's great. Then he's got King Morlach Velmorn and his lads, his bastard sons. And King Morlach Velmorn is 15 wounds, him and his squad, and can be on a 3-up armor save, which is pretty nice. Summonable, they heal at the start of the combat phase, and also they can make it so a unit within 3 inches can't pile in, which is pretty good. And then he's got a Vampire Lord with Morbeg's Claw, which gives him +3 to cast, and he's taking the spell Merciless Blizzard. So if he wants to, he can try and roll for the big 46 mortal wound spell, and because he's in Legion of Night, he does have a hero phase teleport outside of 9 inches. So take the Vampire Lord, teleport him 9 inches away, and just try to blammo a unit off the board. I did say a couple of weeks ago in our first kind of stat center for this GHB, this seems to be a consistent and solid tactic, and I think we're going to continue to see that happen. Then 40 Deadwalker Zombies, 20 Deadwalker Zombies, so 60 wounds in Deadwalker Zombies, and then 2 units of 10 Direwolves, that's another 40 wounds in Direwolves, so up to 100 wounds. Corpse Cart buffing them all up, so they're doing a bunch of damage. 3 units of 3 Fellbats, going grabbing objectives, and then a unit of 20, and also great trading pieces, and then 20 Grave Guard to go and slap and battle stuff, which is super good. And loads, just really, really good. Really great list, played by a great player. Being such a massive event, you end up with a lot of 4-1s, but let me tell you, it gets really exciting off the top of the bat with 2 different Cruel Boys players. Austin Timesh using Grinning Blades, and Jacob Brandon of the Bottom Table Bullies also using Cruel Boys Grinning Blades. And they've both got different lists, but they both contain Gobsprak, but they've got different loadouts on how many Gut Rippers they have and how many shooters they have. But it's mainly Gut Rippers, mainly obviously Bolt Boys in that list. Gobsprak's in that list as well. So 2 different Cruel Boys lists going 4-1, in addition to our other Cruel Boy list going 4-1 as well. That is 3 4-1s for Cruel Boys this weekend already, if you're keeping track. Joe Shoemaker of the Bottom Table Bullies is running Big War. Again, just a combination of loads of different units that are really good, and Joe's an excellent player. Graham Wren was running Beast of Chaos Dark Walkers, and he was running like a slightly different Dark Walker list, what we generally tend to see, because he wasn't using the ability to deep strike a unit outside of 7 inches. So that kind of changed up the list a little bit. And maybe made it more of like an actual play on the tabletop list, which is quite rare, and you don't generally tend to see that. I was just looking for his list now, and I cannot find it, so it's in there somewhere. Then Adam Lindsay was running Ogre Moor Tribes Boulderhead. He was running 3 units of... he was obviously running Stonehorns, but he was using a Huskguard on Stonehorn, and then Stonehorn Beast Riders as his battle line, because the points have changed, and you now probably can't fit a Frostlord in, and those 3. Or he didn't want to do that anyway, so he had a Huskguard on on Stonehorn, with the same loadout we normally see. Which is cool. William Hatch with his Soulblight Gravelords in Vrykross Dynasty was fun. He was running a bunch of summonable units, so zombies and direwolves, as well as Graveguard, and then as well as having the dude that gives the 5-up Ward Aura, whose name is... Torgillus the Chamberlain. He also had the Ulfankani Phylactery Artifact of Power on the Vampire and Zombie Dragon for an additional 5-up Ward Aura. Which is on a massive base. So while the Vampire and Zombie Dragon doesn't get the 5-up ward, because it's only on summonable units, it goes to all the units around him, which is quite cool. A lot of people actually put that on Belladama, because in Vrykross you can actually put an artifact on a named character, which you can't do in most other armies. Nicholas Walters is running Ironjaw's Bloodtooths, plays these all the time. He had 2 units of 6 pigs, and he also had a big unit of brutes. I like brutes in this meta. A lot of people were talking about how do I deal with lots of zombies or all those other things. I mean, the Gravetide Endless Spell is right there in front of all of us and costs literally 30 points. But another way of doing that is making it so they don't count for objectives, which is really good. David Dill was running Sons of Behemoth Breaker Tribe. I think he had 3 gate breakers and then 3 littles, so well done to him. And then, Sons of Behemoth should do really well, I think. Conocel with his Gloomspike Gits, Jaws of Mork, not really taking what we saw in the optimal Jaws of Mork lists that we've been seeing, obviously, all through last GHB. Felt like it was much more a collection of other stuff that you wanted to put in there, including a Loon Boss on Mangler Squigs, which are generally considered to be quite expensive for what you get. Grincrack the Great is in there as well. He's pretty common. And then Hoarfrost is pretty scary, especially if you cast that on a unit of Squig Herd, which is still great, or a unit of Boingrot Bounders, giving them all Ren 3 could be pretty terrifying. A Skitterstrand of Ragnarok in the list as well, which is quite fun for being able to deep strike. I quite like that. Bill Hennessy from the Bottom Table Bullies, shout out to Bill, with his Slaves to Darkness Kabbalist list, just taking pretty, I wouldn't say standard bunch of Slaves to Darkness units, and one of our few Slaves to Darkness lists that we've seen do well so far. You've got an Exalted Hero of Chaos twice, and a Chaos Sorcerer Lord. That's been bonded to an Incarnate. Then 10 Chaos Knights with Nurgle, which is pretty common. Use that to pin enemy units in. and Kronspine Incarnate also used to pin units in. So you've got 2 units that are going to pin the army back. Then a unit, then the Shards of Valagar Endless Spell for shutting down their movement, and then 6 Varangard with the Fell Spear. So if you do need to absolutely destroy a unit, then those 6 Varangard with a Marker Khorne are probably going to do it. They're very, very good. And then he's also got Merciless Blizzard on an Exalted Hero of Chaos as well, because he probably wants to try and get a bunch of 46 more wounds in. Andrew Weinman with his Soulblight Gravelords Legion of Night was a little bit more standard, just some Graveguard and some big boys. Oh, hold on. Yes. Yes, I think that was right. I think that's right. In fact, actually, Andrew, I don't want to mess that up because I think I might have got that right. Let's just double check. Vampire Lord, no, this is the other list, of course. So this is the 3 units of 10 zombies, the direwolves, and then the skeletons. Then 30 Graveguard in that list as well, and Ravanax, Gnashing Jaws. And then he's just got Necromancer, Vampire Lord, and Manfred von Carstein. So he just has a lot of wounds on the board there that are doing loads of additional damage. And he's got all the characters to back it up. Basil Inferrera really showcasing with his Seraphon Cottle's Claw that Seraphon are just as good. The stuff that makes Seraphon good are very useful even if you don't take them in Starborn. So he's got Lord Croak, Skink Starseer, and Astaroth Bannerbearer, which is what we see normally. But he's added the Celestant Prime for that AoE mortal wound damage as well. And then he's got 5 Saurus Guard to tank wounds for Croak and the characters. And then he has 20 and 2 Saurus Warriors in the list. So he's going to be able to still do a load of mortal wound at range. Don't forget Croak does up to 24 mortal wounds. Well, he could do 36 more wounds. But he's going to do really, really well. But now with Saurus Warriors, which are -1 damage, they're going to be super. They're a really solid frontline castle versus the more fragile screening units you have in the more damagey version in Starborn, which I think is good. Morning, hello everyone in the chat. And then finally, we got. Finally. Oh, no. We got Matt Laura, from Vanguard Tactics with Seraphon Fangs of Sotek. And this is actually super fun because he didn't have Croak in his list. He did have the Slan with a command trait, but instead he had 5 units of hunters, 5 units of the new Skink Cavalry, the Combat Skink Cavalry, which I think is very, very fun. Try and find this for you. Yes, 5 units of Raptidon Chargers in his list, a unit of Raptidon Hunters, and 2 Spawn of Chotek in his list as well, which is really fun. But he doesn't have Croak. So the Sandstar Master still with that same loadout, Lord of Celestial Resonance for double the summoning points, and then Space Folder Staff again for teleport within a certain range, which is very, very good. Skink Star Priest with Merciless Blizzard as well. Yeah, very skinky, which is super cool. And then Dakota Tanner with Oceart Bone Reapers, Null Myriad. He had a slightly different list again to everyone else. Instead of just 2 units of 6 in Mortis Guard, he had a unit of 6 in Mortis Guard and a unit of 30 Mortek Guard. 2 Morghast Archai, which are considered to be quite good at the moment. I think a lot of people like the idea that they can turn off command abilities. Geminids is cheaper though. And then as a Mortis and Bone Shaper, Leech Cavalos and Ark and the Black. So no Catacross in that list, which I think is the secret sauce to always give +1 save out to the units. Great event, biggest event so far of this GHB? Yeah, of this GHB, which is cool. And shout out to the Basement Wargamers. Loads to think about there, like the sheer volume of different armies that did well. If you read through that, that's pretty crazy. Loads of different lists, and those lists were pretty different from each other, which is also super fun. And I really like that. Obviously, Soulblight Gravelords stand out a little bit, but Cruel Boy is doing loads of damage and going 4-1 is really, really exciting. Lots of armies missing, obviously, from that kind of like meta there. Lumineth Realmlords not in that kind of top bracket. You obviously would see those before. Squig's nowhere near as represented, but I think the Squig players have moved on to be Soulblight Gravelords players as well. You've still got things like Sons of Behemoth in the list. Karajan Overlords are still playing, so loads of interesting different armies, and importantly for us as gamers, a very wide meta, lots of different armies, which is really cool. And even our 350s are all different factions as well. So shout out to all of those players for doing so. The next event is the biggest event we had in the UK this weekend. 60 players played at Feud in the Fens, a new event that happens in Northampton here at this hall which is super nice. There is a dojo nearby. Someone teaches karate out of their garage, so do be aware of that. 60 players attended, and it was organised by Steve Follows, Lewis Swan, and Ben Harper. Shout out to them for having the courage to set up a new event and run it, so well done to them. The event was won by Russell Taylor with his 5-0, and then Richie McCallie also in the 5-0 bracket. So we're going to talk about both of those now. First up, nice to see Daughters of Cain doing so well, so shout out to Russell for doing so good. He was running Hagnar, and he had Marathi Kane, and they had a Meliusite Iron Scale with Zealous Orator, which is a 4+ rally, and then the Arcane Tome. Then 15 Blood Sisters, which are the fighty combat snakes, and then 2 units of 10 Witch Elves, and then he's got an allied Tree Lord, which I think will set the internet on fire, which is great. You'd love to see something clever like that put in. Then he had Laquan the Soul Seeker in his list as well, and 2 units of 5 Heart Renders. Now, Russell's in the chat, has been talking about this already. He liked to use Laquan the Soul Seeker, obviously, on Marathi, giving her a really massive threat range, so little baby Marathi, meaning she can run up the board and fight in conjunction, obviously, with the big Marathi as well, doing lots of damage. A nice little trick, obviously, also is that the allied in Tree Lord can make a unit fight last and do no pile-ins. This is especially good because then that means that the Blood Sisters, the fighty combat snakes, are going to be able to do lots of combat damage when they are charged, if you fight in a kind of like little circle together, which is really good. And in addition to that, obviously Marathi is going to be able to make them fight twice in the hero phase. So that's also really powerful as well. So the Blood Sisters are going to do a lot of output, and then the Zealous Orator, if they do end up taking a lot of damage, are going to be able to rally on a 4+, which is nice as well. And finally, the Witch Elves can do quite a lot of attacks in the right situation. They're little screening units, which you can just do a lot of dice, which is also really valuable as well. And the Heart Renders are great for obviously grabbing back objectives and also doing battle tactics. And it's a 1-drop. So I would also say there's something to be said about the 1-drop in this GHB. I've said this already, past couple of stats shows, and I think I said this also when I reviewed a bunch of the End of Spells, is if you actually look through a lot of the battle plans, going second is really, really advantageous. You got a lot of strengths. So even though you obviously can't control the later turns in going second, what you can do is you can obviously choose to go second in the first battle round, and then when the priority roll comes up, you can either choose a double, which is super strong, or you can choose to go second, which is also really strong in this GHB. So I think being on 1-drop is actually super impressive right now. Pretty amazing. And congrats to Russell. Richie was Richie McCallie from the Just Play Game Store up in Liverpool. If you haven't been, it's great. He also runs a bunch of events up there if you want to go check it out. Super nice. He was running Flesh Eater Courts, and he was running the sub-faction Morgan. Now, we actually did a review on the Flesh Eater Courts earlier on last week. We went through the whole battle tome again, using all of the new updated war scrolls, all of the new things that really change up how the army plays. And one of the key points to talk about is the sub-faction Morgan. If you have any surf units, which is ghouls, and also the Beast Flayers, which is the Warcry Warband, then when they're wiped out, you can bring a whole unit of them back for a command point. This combos really nicely with Nagash, who, when a unit dies, on a 3+, you can bring that unit back if it's got the Mordant keyword, and ghouls have the Mordant keyword. And that means that you can bring that unit back up to half strength. So if you were to have a unit of Crypt Ghouls, like you can see here, a unit of 30, if they were to die, then you can bring a unit of 30 back and an additional unit of 15, creating 45 ghouls from your unit of 30 ghouls. So you actually kill more than you start. You get more back. And don't forget, obviously, also it's Flesh Eater Courts, so the Arc Regent's going to be able to summon a unit. That Arc Regent can summon a unit of up to 20 ghouls, but probably going to summon a unit of 20 Beast Flayers, which is the Warcry Warband, because, again, we talked about this on the review show, but if you do the math, you can just stack a lot of attacks on them, and the unit champion itself can, like, one-shot, like, Archeon, as an example, if you put the right spells on it. A Boron Ghoul King in the list as well. And then an Umbral Spell Portal, a Malevolent Maelstrom. That Umbral Spell Portal is so good, obviously, with Nagash, because he can hand of dust a unit off the board. So you've got, like, ghouls doing a ton of attacks to take out infantry and, like, you know, large units, and then you've got Nagash for fighting all those big monsters and just hand of dusting them off. So super fun. So those are the two 5-0s. In the 4-1 bracket, you've got Jack Armstrong with a monstrous Soulblight Gravelords list in Avengori. He's got Luke of I, a Vengori Lord, a Necromancer, another Necromancer, and then one Zombie Dragon, and 1, 2, 3, for Terrorgeist. It's pretty much like we saw Adam Mumford's army play with his cockatrices. So it's the same sort of play style where you can just got a lot of objective control units that can run around very fast. Each one counts as 5, so you can put 20 points of objective control in one place and then 20 points somewhere else pretty quick, which is fun, as well as being monsters, doing lots of monsters actions and doing lots of fighting. Owen Jackson's Blade of Corn is the classic blue deck Age of Sigmar army right now. I don't know if you don't know what Legion of the First Prince is, this is a Legion of the First Prince army with extra steps. This is a Khorne army in Reapers of Vengeance. Shout out to Owen for making little notes on how his list plays. We've seen this a lot. Shout out to Rune, who was doing it for Team Denmark, and also to Gareth from Old Town Throwdown, who was the first person I saw do this. Make sure I shout people out. I did already in the past, but apparently people didn't listen. And then you've got Bloodthirst from Infected Fury, Bloodthirst from Sense Rage, 2 Slaughter Priests, a Rumgor Ritualist, and Be'lakor. Then a unit of 2 Flesh Hounds, a unit of Blood Reavers, and then Claws of Karnak, and then 3 Blood Crushers. Hexgorgeous Skulls for shutting down enemy casts, and the Wrath Axe doing a ton of mortal wounds. What do I mean by being a blue control deck? With the Murderlust Blood Tithe ability that you get for Khorne and Be'lakor being able to shut down a unit, you can, as we saw in Peter Twig's victory at our event here at the TSN Arena 2 weeks ago, you can just shut down units so they can't even engage in the game. Owen adding in Be'lakor as well, so he's got that easy battle tactic on the first turn from the new GHB where he casts a spell in Khorne. Feels a little antithetical to how Khorne play, but it really works in with the key mechanics of how that army should play, because the army for some reason is a debuffing, movement control, like debuff army versus, well, it's not really a debuff army, it's more of a board control army. Like, it shuts units, it's a pinning army in many ways, which is rough. Then Mike Stewart with Seraphon. He lost to Richie's Infinite Ghoul list, so shout out to Richie for keeping Seraphon down. So Seraphon actually not as strong as we initially thought, and thanks to Richie for proving that. So it just turns out that if you can just make an army that doesn't die, and in fact actually creates more units than when it dies, then you can beat Seraphon. He's got Lord of Croaks, Celeros, Ashloth, Bannerbearer, Slan Starmaster, Starseer, some Saurus Guard, some Skinks, and he's got a Kronspine Incarnate of Gur in that list as well. I guess that's to pin units in, as he does loads of AoE mortal wound damage, because you do have a fairly fragile front line in the Starborn version of the list. Matt Goldsborough with his Seraphon took Lord Croak, Slan Starmaster, same loadouts obviously, but this time he was running the Skink Oracle on Troglodyton, Ashloth Bannerbearer, some Saurus Guard and then some 2 Basiladons with Ark of Sotek, which is seeing a lot of play. I guess the Basiladons of Ark of Sotek are doing exactly what we've seen the Kronspine Incarnate do in the other list, which is pin the enemy back and then do loads of AoE mortal wound damage, and they legit can do their own damage as well. And then he's got the Aether Void Pendulum, Malevolent Maelstrom, and the Soul Screen Bridge. And then Ben Mardle, shout out to him, that's amazing, with a 4-1 with Slanesh. He's in Pretenders, so extra CP, loads of command abilities. He's got Contorted Epitome, but instead of making him the general, he made a Keeper Secrets the general. Again, the same loadout you would see on the Contorted Epitome, specifically being the Strength of Godhood and the Crown of Dark Secrets. And then he's got a unit of Seekers, another unit of Seekers, and he's got a unit of Blissbarb Archers, and he's got himself a unit of 6 Fiends, which is fun. They've got a new coherency now, which is really nice, and then 2 units of 5 Slickblade Seekers in there as well. So just lots of damage in combat, especially with Fight Twice, thanks to the Keeper of Secrets. And the Fiends are actually really interesting because they obviously tie in really nicely into specific builds, specifically big wound units. So well done to him. And then you've got Darren Watson with Sylvaneth. So this is Oakenbrow list. So this is a little bit similar to the Oakenbrow list we saw in the GHB previously. However, it has changed up a little bit, specifically because he's put Gotrek in this list and a unit of Kurnoth Hunters with Scythes. So previously, I think we saw people kind of committing, or maybe overcommitting, would be what Darren would say, with things like the Tree Lord Ancient to make sure you can teleport Durthu around, and the Tree Lords, and instead he's got Gotrek, who is probably much better in that situation because he can take the mid board and make it so you can't fight against them. and the other units just bop around. The thing to say probably also about Gotrek as well is with the new Lookout Sir rule, can't be targeted outside of 12 inches, which is fun. Max Barton with a Maggotkin and Nurgle list is quite fun. It's more of like a summoning Maggotkin list. Blobe, Morbidex, Orgots, Demon Spew, and a Great Unclean one. This has got Flaming Weapons and the Witherstave. Witherstave is going to be able to make it so you do additional mortal wounds, or like the disease roll is much better in range. The Great Unclean one is very difficult to deal with. And then Orgots and Morbidex and Blobe, so 4 monsters. Again, they can go and grab a lot of objectives, and they're incredibly difficult to kill, and then you're taking a lot of disease points for being near them in close combat, and then the Witherstave is increasing that disease point allocation. And then you've got Beast of Nurgle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Beast of Nurgle, which are going to charge and do mortal wounds, retreat and do mortal wounds. So there's just a lot of mortal wound damage coming out from this, and it's fun to see Max playing this. This is great. Ollie Fox with OCR Bone Reapers, we're playing Null Myriad. He's got Arcane, Catagros, Bone Shaper, some Death Riders, and then 1 unit of 6 Immortus Guard. Haven't said this yet, but those 6 Immortus Guard no longer need to be 2 3s. They could be a strung out unit of 6, which is fun. Soul Stealer Carrion in there as well. And then James Lake with our last 4-1 with Soulblight Gravelords. This time with Frykros, Belladama, with the Orphan Carna Phylactery, so that's that 5-up ward save. Necromancer, Vampire Lord. No Torgillis in this list, though. And 60 Deadwalker Zombies, 2 units of 20 Deadwalker Zombies, 2 units of 10 Dire Wolves, and then some Graveguard and a Corpse Cart. So very difficult to deal with. I think if you are coming up against those, I would try and take the Gravetide. That should start doing a lot of mortal wounds into the army. Not that they overly care, but that would be something I think you should probably do. Yeah, it looks like a great event. Hope everyone had a lovely time. Again, really diverse set of lists, some really unique lists in there as well. Maybe one of the first few times we've seen like the Infinite Ghoul list. It has played previously at events. Daughters of Cain doing well is rare. Soulblight Gravelords common again in these lists as well. But you've got Sylvaneth, Sinesh, Nurgle. So a bunch of different lists which we haven't seen previously. So that's the next event we were going to cover is the Midwest Meltdown with 58 players. Looks like a really super fun event, and you can go check out all of the event results on BCP. The only reason we're not going to cover it in detail is because you got to bring a free Warcry warband with each one of your armies, or at least that's what the chat are telling me. It was organised by Kevin Fleming. Shout out to him. Was super looks like a really great event, and there was some fun lists. Hope you had a wonderful time. We just generally don't tend to cover events that have like kind of like house rules like that and stuff on. But I hope you had a great time. Super fun stuff happened. Like, feel free to do events like that and have the most amazing time. Obviously, you don't need my permission. Like, do what you like. But like, I hope you had a great time. That's all I got to say. But we're not going to cover it today. But I just wanted to mention it happened. The next event is the FLG Outlaw GT over in Texas, organised by Brian Lofton. Shout out, Brian. Hope you had a wonderful time. It was organised here at 777. Just a big hotel. Just a big ass hotel. Shout out to the Austin Weird Knobs in the chat. I hope you had a lovely time. We had 46 players playing at this event, and the event was won, and our first place and only 5-0 was by the infamous Silent Violence, Mr. Tom Guan of Harambe's Heroes. He brought a Soulblight Gravelords Vrykros Dynasty list. And he was running Torgillis the Chamberlain, who's a 5-up Ward Aura, and also he has a Gorslav Gravekeeper with the Orphan Carni Phylactery. Don't forget, Gorslav helps you bring back a slain unit. Then he took, I think it's something along the lines of 200. He had a unit of 40 Deadwalker Zombies, another unit of 40. In fact, he had 3 units of 40 Deadwalker Zombies for 120 zombies. And then he had another 2 units of Deadwalker Zombies for 180 Deadwalker Zombies. Then he had 2 units of 10 Direwolves. Don't forget the 2 wounds each. So that's another 40 wounds that you get to add on to that mix, taking us up to 220 wounds. 2 units of Corpse Cart in that list as well. So he has 220 wounds on a 5-up ward save, which is pretty amazing. Tom was on a timer, so a chess clock, all weekend. Apparently he didn't use any more than an hour of his time, which would be longer than Tom would have liked to have spent on his games, to be honest. Obviously, it's got an insane amount of objective control, which is why earlier on, when I talked about Iron Jaws, I talked about the fact that Brutes could make a real comeback because they make it so that 1 or 2 wound models don't count for holding objectives, which feels like a massive positive in this particular meta, especially with lots of zombies running around. But yeah, he ran a lot of bodies, and it's just an incredible amount of wounds that's just basically unkillable because he's got that 5-up ward save, which is crazy. Now, I did talk about Seraphon earlier, so I should talk about this. And I think Soulblight Gravelords definitely are in a place where they're probably too strong. Their positive win rate potential is probably too high. The reason maybe it doesn't generate as much negative feelings as when you play against it is you do, as the opposing player, get to kill loads of stuff, which is super fun. You just kill loads and loads of stuff. You just lose the game, but you don't really realize you're losing until later, and you just don't hold any objectives. But you do get to kill loads of units, so it probably feels a little bit more positive. Shout out to Tom for, just breaking the game and being a jerk, but being beautiful as well. Now let's take a look at the 4-1s. And let me tell you, if you haven't bought, or at least been sent pictures or looked online, the Harbinger's book, it's going to be becoming useful right now, because Christopher Schelling of Harambe's Heroes was running Sons of Behemoth Breaker Tribe list, but the spice for this is 2 Gatebreakers and a War Stomper, but he also brought along the warband here, the Rabble Rouser, Braggett's Bottle Snatchers, and his battalion. Now, the Rabble Rouser himself gives monsters run and charge, so the friendly monsters. So the Gatebreakers and the War Stomper are having run and charge, which is just amazing. So now they're going even faster and charging you. But the Rabble Rouser's unit can also deploy into Deep Strike and then pop up, which is really good as well. So his unit of 5 Gobble Loser, the Squig Herd, and the Squig Hoppers can go into Deep Strike and then charge. So it's quite fun, especially like mechanically for how the army will work, because they're just going to be able to charge at the front lines and then sneak around the back, which is really good, and I really like it. Then he's got himself, next up we got Jonathan Shesless with his OCR Bone Reapers, and this is just like Catacross, Archon, Bone Sheeper, and Mortek Guard, the normal stuff that we normally get in a list like that. Then you got Noah Quino, and Noah Quino was using, again, one of our new Harbingers in his Fireslayer list. He was running 2 Auric Flamekeepers, which is what we saw kind of last season. Units that die, or models that die from the Fireslayers, or any unit actually, within range, keep tacking up the Fireslayer ability, so the dice. So the Flamekeepers can use their ability to do all of those extra kind of abilities that they do, which is fun. Then you got the Grimhold Exiled. Now, the Grimhold Exile. He gives a AoE run and charge once per battle to all Fireslayer units wholly within 6 inches of him, which is amazing. And then an Auric Rune Master, a Battlesmith, obviously with an Orsidian icon, and the Auric Rune Father. Then 4 units of 10 Volkite Berserkers, and then a unit of 10 Hearthguard Berserkers, a unit of 5 Hearthguard Berserkers. So what you've got is army-wide run and charge. Also, when they strike the runes, they're going to be able to go that much faster. So arguably one of the key problems that the Fireslayer army has had is its inability to really go across the board. It just sometimes can go a bit faster thanks to the rune. Now it's got army-wide run and charge. Unbelievable stuff. Also got the Pouch and Null Dust as well in there to shut down enemy magic. We also then saw a Cragbro list. So Randall Brasher was running his Ogre Maw Tribe's Meat Fist army. That means that you do the mortal wound impact damage that you do from charging in, which is the Ogre Allegiance ability. You get to add +1 to that. Then he's got a list of Tyrants. So he's got Kragnos in the list for a 3d6 charge. Then he's got himself 1, 2, 3, 4 Tyrants. They've taken the big name, which means they do mortal wound impact hits on 4s when they charge in. Now, because they're a Meat Fist, that's going to be 3s. So 3d6 charge. And then 3d6 charge, which should be on average be 11. Roll 11 dice, every 3 up is a mortal wound. Just tons and tons of damage. Then a unit of 4 Iron Guts, 2 units of 4 Lead Belchers, and then 20 Noblars in the list as well. So a ton of mortal wounds when they charge in. And then obviously Kragnos is in there as well. A Blazicorn list, which is really fun. James West of Harambe's Heroes running Gore-Tide. And he was doing a murder roll list, which is super cool. Bloodsecrator, Corgus Call, Scar Bloodwrath dies, comes back to life. Slaughter Priest, Skull Grinder, and a Realm Call Rich list for that +1 to hit aura. Then he's got 20 Blood Warriors, which, once you use Corgus Call's ability, will be doing 3 murder rolls for every one of the Blood Warriors that dies. 2 units of Claws of Karnak, 3 Mighty Skull Crushers, 3 Margor's Fiends, and then 2 units of 5 Wrathmongers with the Bleeding Icon and the Hexgorge Skulls, along with the Pouch of Null Dust for shutting down enemy magic. So shut down enemy magic, doing yeah, shutting down all enemy magic, which is really good. Obviously, Hex Scourge scores for doing additional mortal wound damage to those as well. And then anytime you kill some of these models, not only are they getting Blood Tithe points, but also in addition, you're taking mortal wounds for the privilege, which is just really cool. And then one more OCR Bone Reaper list from Dylan Cochoran. Well done to you. Again, similar stuff as we've seen previously. So really great. I hope everyone had a really fun time at the event. Well done to Tom for trolling everyone. Our next event, and I definitely am not recording this 5 days later after a vicious bout of the flu, is 2d6 Oslo Hammer, number 5. 2d6 is one of, if not the biggest, wargaming club in the world. They have nearly 200 active regular members attend their wargaming club, located in Oslo, in Norway. This event was organised by Geir Videlt, my good friend. I really like that guy. And it's located here, above the Narvesen Shopping Centre. You can see it there if you want to go check it out. And it's a great little gaming club, so big fan. Okay, so as we know, we had 22 players playing in Norway. And our event was not won, unfortunately, by Geir, although I'm sure he did play. And instead, it was won by Danny Elvsted, one of the Norwegian team members. In fact, most of the Norwegian AOS Worlds team are featured in either the 5-0s or 4-1s. We only have one 5-0 though, and it's Big War. Some really fun stuff to say about Big War. Most importantly, obviously, they got all of those battle tactics, at least 2 battle tactics, in the Battle Scroll update that happened a few weeks ago. You can go find that on warhammercommunity.com, and that's been really advantageous for them because now they're not necessarily struggling on battle tactics, so they can get their 10 points over the course of a battle. Instead, they're trying to just fight over primary points, and it's whether or not they've got the staying power to do so. So in Big War, you've got an Uruk Weir Nob Shaman. Obviously, he's super useful because he's got the great big green-handed Gork, and he's probably going to be teleporting the Wurgog Prophet, who already was a mortal wound bunker. Now being able to teleport that guy and him doing Hoarfrost, as well as doing the Wurgog Prophet spell, is great. He's probably going to put Hoarfrost for on, I don't know who he's going to put on, maybe on the Brutes, maybe on the Gork Runners. We'll talk about what's in the list as well. So Hoarfrost, don't forget, can change the characteristic of the hit to the wound and rend. Then you've got a Mega Boss and Maw Crusher, just absolutely going in. 2 Uruk War Chanters, a unit of 5 Uruk Brutes, 2 units of 5 Boys. And I have talked about Brutes already. This GHB, I think they're actually much, much better. Lots of the threats that are in the game holding primary objectives are 1 to 2 win miniatures. And I think the Brutes obviously deal with shutting them down for scoring. A unit of 3 Gore Grunters, a unit of 6 Gore Grunters. So obviously they're going to do a lot of the punch power in the army. Mega Boss and Maw Crusher making them go fast. The trick here, though, is Gobsprak. Again, Gobsprak is in the list. And this is now featuring. We've had 3 4-1s with Gobsprak in. This is another 5-0 or a 5-0, with Gobsprak in as well. So shutting down all of that magic casting. I did say, and I did say at the start of the edition, it feels like this is an anti-magic edition, but because there's so much bonuses to casting, i.e., and I don't mean like pluses to cast, I mean literally casting spells is really good. I think what we're actually going to see is people trying to shut down those spells for an advantage. And Gobsprak does really well. Shout out to Denny. Denny, I'm so sorry. Shout out to Danny for doing really well with this list. Excellent work. In the 4-1 bracket, we've got 3 pretty famous players. Ulla Vatland, with his Disciples of Zinch, Guild of Summoners Army. Benjamin Fluda, doesn't matter how you say his name. I hope I've got that right. Soulblight Gravelords, Legion of Night, and then Fjutr Froshag. I've definitely got that right, with his Gloomspite Gits. Disciples Zinch list is not too dissimilar to Disciples Zinch list we would have seen pre this GHB. Guild of Summoners, obviously you can summon Lords of Change, much easier, but they're the only things you can summon. Curseling in the list is pretty good, especially because he's got a great ability to reroll reroll unbinding rolls, which means shutting down enemy unbinds is very effective in my personal opinion. Has also got Shield of Fate and Arcane Suggestion. He's taken an enhancement to take 2 spell choices as well, and that's always really good on the Curseling because he's normally one of your few mortal casters. So you always want to cast Arcane Suggestion, and Shield of Fate is really good because he can tie himself to a demon and make it so he won't die. Kara's Fate Weaver, obviously 3 spells, loads of damage. Then he's got a Beast of Chaos, Zangor Shaman, and that's got all of the new spell, so Hoarfrost and Merciless Blizzard, which is interesting. I wonder if he's going to use him to just nuke units. Hoarfrost, incredibly good, especially on the right units. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then he's got a Magister in the list with Arcane Sacrifice, and then he's got Arcane Suggestion and Bolt Zinch. So the things to talk about here, 2 units of 10 pink horrors, 9 Untamed Beasts, and then he's got 10 Zangor and 20 Splintered Fang. Hoarfrost is really good on those because either of those 2 units with pluses to either to hits or rend is going to make them much more effective, which is kind of like a pivot from how we saw these lists play previously, where we wouldn't see anything too dissimilar to the leader loadout that we're seeing right now. And the horrors are obviously such a staple in what is a Zinchian castle. But these are nice, new, aggressive units that you're seeing put in the list. They're pretty much making up where the Incarnate would previously feature. Although, as we know earlier in events in the USA, the Incarnate in Zinch is still really, really effective. Then Tome of Irons, Malevolent Maelstrom, and Geminids of Ulgish. Geminids just should beat OBR every time. Malevolent Maelstrom, absolutely disgustingly OP for 30 points. And that's everything in the Zinch list, so shout out. Then in our Soulblight Gravelords list in Legion of Night, it's quite interesting actually, quite different to stuff we've seen differently, or at least different loadouts. 2 Necromancers, Manfred, a Vampire Lord, a White King on Skeletal Steed. Then 10 Direwolves, 20 Zombies, and then 30 Deathrattle Skeletons. 30 Deathrattle Skeletons is a double reinforced unit, so they're very tough to get rid of in the right situation because they always do recursion or healing. They return models at the beginning of each combat step. And so that's actually quite effective, and they're harder to get rid of than you would necessarily think. Then he's got 2 units of 10 Black Knights. Now these are good pinning units, and when 10 of them die, you do get 5 back, which is quite nice, especially because they do charges, and when they charge in, they do mortal wounds. I feel like I don't know why there's a unit of 10 over 4 units of 5, but I think Benjamin, who obviously did really well here, has got some reasons. And then there's the Andorian Acolytes Core Battalion. That's pretty important, especially with all of these casters, because they're going to want to cast Merciless Blizzard and Hoarfrost a lot. In fact, so much so that you're seeing Merciless Blizzard taken on at least 2 different characters. So that's the 46 mortal wound spell. So definitely really, really important, which I think is interesting. Which I quite like. And then finally our Gits list is Scragrot, a Madcap Shaman, and a Dankhold Trogboss. Then it's 3 units of 6 Rotgut Troggoths. Again, the thing to talk about with Rotguts specifically is that they are now much more easy to move around the tabletop because they're not suffering from the coherency problem that they had previously, thanks to the Battle Scroll update. So these units of 6 are a little bit more interesting. We saw on the DOMS game that we streamed a few weeks ago where we had that unit 6 create like a crescent moon. Some would call it a bad moon. Thank you very much. I'm here all week. And then inside of it was a Fellwater Troggoth that would be being sick over the top. And so that created a really nice kind of hammer unit, which I thought was quite fun. And then some Sports Platter Fanatics, a Dankhold Troggoth in the list as well. So again, Gits, one of the things we don't talk about enough is, again, they're pretty good at always achieving their grand strat in chasing the moon, because you have to try and kill the Dankhold Trogboss, which is almost impossible. So I think that's just really effective. So they always start 3 points up, which is really nice. And then getting rid of Rotguts is just incredibly tough. So that's something to be aware of. Anyway, the Norwegian scene is really great. The 2D6 Club is awesome. And if you do get the opportunity to go over to Norway, please do take the time to go there. The next event takes us to the idyllic location of Sweden. Straight Edge Wargaming puts on a lot of events over there. And the Straight Edge Wargaming event, It's Andor, Not Andor, You Stupid Wookie, was organised by Johan Borander and featured 16 players playing. There were no 5-0s. At this event, but as you can see, it was located in this idyllic country cottage, which is really nice. We did have 3 4-1s though, and unsurprisingly, Seraphon featured quite heavily here. Theodore Papachristodula, first time I want that shout out that I got that right. With his Seraphon Fangs and Sotek went 4-1. Adam Saff with his Soulblight Gravelords Legion of Blood went 4-1, and Johan Lundstrom with his Seraphon Draco's Tail. There's not much difference between Theodore's and Johan's list, but I'll just talk about them quickly. Croak, Slan Starmaster, this is in Fangs of Sotak, with the same loadout that you're about to see in the other list. Skink Stars here with Merciless Blizzard and Astaroth Bannerbearer. Saurus Guard, and then 2 units of Saurus Warriors in this version of the list. Some Skinks, Horrorghast, Malevolent Maelstrom, Umbral Spell Portal, Hunters of Haunt You, Blowpipes, ×2. Horrorghast is obviously really good in a Seraphon list because they do AoE mortal wound damage, hitting multiple units, therefore multiple different battle shock tests, which, as you can only inspire in presence a unit that means you're going to suffer a lot, but Horrorghast is going to double down on that, meaning you can't obviously do that you can't Inspire and Presence any of the units. The other Seraphon list, just to keep this in track, Slant Star Master with the same loadout, Lord Croak, Astroth Bannerbearer, Skink Star Priest with the same loadout, another Skink Stars here, and then a Skink Oracle on Troglodon, Saurus Guard, and then 2 units of Skinks, 1 unit of Raptidon Chargers, and the loadout for the spells here, Spell Portal, Maelstrom, and of course the Aether Void Pendulum. So a lot of AoE mortal wound damage with the Umbral Spell Portal and the Skink Oracle on Troglodon, meaning he can still cast 2 spells at a huge range. He can do 1 through the portal, 1 through the Troglodon, which is really nice. Soulblight Gravelords list, Legion of Blood, Neferata, Vampire Lord, and Zombie Dragon. Now that is a general with Doom minions. That means your units can hit enemy units up to D3 of them and hit them on 2s if they're not monsters and heroes. And the Cloak of Mist and Shadows mean that you obviously ignore Rend, and he's got the flaming weapons on there as well, making him do more damage. And in Legion of Blood, you get that +1 attack because you're a vampire, so you can do loads of extra damage. 3 units of minimum zombies, 1 unit of 20 skeletons, and a unit of maxed out, well, not maxed out Graveguard, but 20 Graveguard. They're just a great combat unit, as always, obviously. And then with Neferata making it so they ignore Rend, they're just that much more survivable, which is good. So yeah, just really, really, really strong. I think the chat a moment ago was saying that obviously one of the problems that Soulblight Gravelords face is that Seraphon obviously shut down their casting a lot. But Soulblight Gravelords have to comfortably have one of the strongest positive win rate potentials of this GHB already. So positive win rate potential is, we look at 5 games and we look at which armies are most likely to get a positive win rate, which is a 3-2 or better. The highest we ever had was Gargants with an 80% positive win rate potential. I think Soulblight Gravelords, while not pushing that, they're definitely going to be really high. Highest I've seen in a long time, so that's great. If you get the chance to go to Sweden, please do go to the Straight Edge Wargaming events. Just super lovely person. Our next event takes us to Spain for the GT DOS de Dixis de Gran. I've definitely got that wrong. Anyway, we had 16 players playing in Spain, which is cool, and it was organised by Mina LM. Now, our winner was Jesus de la Pena Fernandez. Shout out to him. And he was running OCR Bone Reapers in No Myriad. He had Arcan the Black, Catacross, and Immortals and Bowshaber with Diversionary Tactics, which is no deep strikes within a certain range, which is really good. And then the Artisan's Key, again, for the heal. Then 3 units of Death Riders, so 3 units of 5 Cavalry Death Riders, and then unit of 6 Immortis Guard. And then the Suffocating Gravetide Ender spell, which I think is a hot pick in this GHB, obviously because it's so good into units with lots of bodies in. So Soulblight Gravelords feature normally with lots of bodies in their units. This does mortal wounds to all of them. I like Suffocating Gravetide. I think it's really strong. Okay, so this is pretty much like all the OCR Bone Reapers list that we've talked about. Arcan, Catacross giving everyone +1 save. Don't forget, Catacross in No Myriad doesn't benefit from the No Myriad sub-faction because he's keyword locked somewhere else, so he doesn't get that spell ignore. Arcan, obviously he's going to do healing, does great casting as well. Bone Shaper's going to do healing. So you can return several models into these Death Rider units. Like you can return 3? Into each Death Rider unit for a total of 9 because of Catacross, the Bone Shaper, and Arcan. And of course, if you wanted to, the Immortis Guard, which is a unit of 6, as we've talked about previously, you could return up to 4, but it does require you to roll loads of dice to do it. And they're just 30 wounds on a 2-up, 5-up, which is super good. Yeah, just really, really good. So super strong. So that is our 5-0 from Spain. Our 4-1 is Daniel Amador, and he was also running OCR Bone Reapers. So this time, though, he was running Mortis Praetorian, so it's not the spell ignore, it's actually charging your opponent's turn. And he doesn't have Arcan in his list. So he's got Arch Cavalos Xantos, Catacross, and Mortis and Bone Shaper. Then he's got a unit of Death Riders, a unit of Mortek Guard, and then he has 2 units of 6. A unit of Mortek Guard, a unit of Cavalos Death Riders, and then 2 units of 6 in Mortis Guard. So not quite as much healing in this list, obviously, because Arcan isn't there to do the additional healing. But the Catacross and the Bone Shaper can still do a lot of healing into the Immortis Guard, but not as much, obviously. But they're going to be a very aggressive frontage and also can charge you your opponent's turn, which is also really good. The Immortis Guard are just the best unit in that book by and large, and then it's all about the units that you stick around it. And I'm sure OCR Bone Reapers players will have a good conversation about why, like which ones are better and which loadouts make it slightly more efficient. Death Riders also feature very heavily in these lists, and I think it's just because they're just so mobile, they're so fast, and every OCR Bone Reapers player swears by them, which is great. So I hope everyone had a lovely time in Spain. Our next event takes us back to merry old England, and this is the Fields of Slaughter event. Now, this event was organised by Calvin Smith in the chat. Let's go. Organised near Birmingham, quite near the Dolphin Fish and Chip Bar, which is a great fish and chippy if you've not had it. Curry sauce is only £1.20, which is a bargain. It really is. So we had 14 players playing at this event, and our winning list, and I'm willing to say now that they might be a problem, is Michael McLean running Soulblight Gravelords Legion of Blood. He had, and it's very traditional at this point, Vampire and Zombie Dragon with Doom Minions and Cloak of Mist and Shadows, Neferata in that list as well, which means there are 10 Blood Knights, which you can see there, and then it's just 100 wounds of Dead Walker zombies in the middle. Nice and simple, battle reg, I've said this before, if you can go low drops, be low drops, you can control the game state much better in this GHB, especially as you go in second lot. The battle plans are a bonus for that. Absolutely wicked job on his part. He should be really chuffed with himself. And then our second place, Stephen Burfitt, an absolute thunderously sexy piece of man meat, if you don't know that. So shout out to Stephen. And he was running OCR Bone Reapers, Mortis Praetorians. So he had Catacross and Mortis and Bone Shaper again with the Artisan's Key, but this time he had Dark Acolyte instead, meaning first spell he casts can't be unbound. Mortis and Ost Effector for that +1 to Wound Aura. The Gothizzar Cartouche only can be taken on a Mortis and Ost Effector, which is the new mini from Games Workshop. +1 to Wound Aura, obviously incredible in a melee army. 1 unit of Death Riders, a unit of 3 Stalkers, a unit of 6 Immortis Guard again, and then 2 units of Morghast Archai. Now, a lot of people swearing by these at the moment. The ability to turn off command abilities feels like you could just put Geminids in your list and just get the same job, but they're also fast, so they're able to, and they also can fly. So you've got ability to create like a pretty solid front line thanks to the Immortis Guard, and then you're able to fly these units over the top, and then charge units in the flank, the rear, or get units to the back that they're not really necessarily expecting to be charged because of that movement, which feels really positive. Anyway, if you get the chance to go and visit Calvin and the guys over in Birmingham, please do so, and I hope everyone had a lovely time. Our next and last event of this weekend is the Slaughter and Sun GT with 12 players playing across England. This was organised by the Hulls Angels Wargaming Club. There you can see their venue. They've got this lovely top floor. You can go check it out. 12 players playing. We only ended up with 1-4-1 at this event. It was 4 and a draw. This is Daniel Bean with his OCR Bone Reapers Null Myriad, Mortis and Bone Shaper, Ost Effector. This is in Null Myriad. This is one of the Yorkshire Fisters. An Ark in the Black. He's got 6 Necropolis Stalkers, so if we're going offense over defense, then 2 units of Morghast Archai, and then a unit of 6 Immortis Guard. So just featuring so heavily, and then a Nightmare Predator in that list as well. So congratulations to him, and I hope hello Etmum in the chat, and congratulations to everyone at that event. I hope they had a nice time. Okay, let's get some final thoughts going on from this series of events. This is our biggest. This is the biggest event of. Okay, so let's talk about like how we feel about it all. Right. Okay. OBR featured incredibly heavily. Soulblight Gravelords featured incredibly heavily. Do we think that they're a problem? I'm not sure. I think they might be a little bit overcooked in some cases, but I don't think that they're aggressively too good. I just think they're very strong. It does mean that we're also in a combat meta as well. Soulblight Gravelords inherently a combat army, and then same with OCR Bone Reapers, also a heavy combat army. They've got great armor saves. They've either got great armor saves or they're good at wound tanking as well, which I think is quite interesting in many cases. I did obviously in this video talk about how Seraphon are really strong, and I do think we're still seeing Seraphon build up to the power that it's going to hit at in the future. Now, obviously, if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to push an agenda, and I do need to recognize that there are just so many Soulblight Gravelords lists doing so well at all these different events. Loads of armies just not even remotely featuring in these events as well. But the big news, Cruel Boys, Big War, Nighthorn, all kind of like featuring, especially at some big events. Now, the Nighthorn list was played by someone who's incredibly good. The Big War list, also going 5-0, was in a very, very tough meta over in Norway. Then the all of the Cruel Boys list going 4-1 is a big shout, especially as our Big War list also featured Gobsprak. So that's 4 Gobspraks across this meta, which I think is super interesting. So there's also loads to break down from that as well. So I don't know right now how I'm feeling about it all. Like, one of the other things that we should really mention is that this might be some people's first tournament experience of the new GHB. There's loads to think about. Primal dice, the new battle plans, learning how to play them well. We're still very early in this GHB. So while I agree some of the armies are featuring a lot, and that does mean that their positive win rate potential, so how likely they are to go 3-2 or better, is going to be much higher, and their win rate is probably going to be higher as well, I would just always caution a little bit at the moment on exactly what the meta looks like. But, you know, standout units. Immortis Guard, you know, that Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon in Soulblight Gravelords, all of the zombies probably could be looked at a little bit in the future in a balance update, especially as they might just be depressing the other win rates for the other armies as well, which I think is interesting. So lots to think about, and I'd like to know what you all think as well. So I've been talking with the chat about this for today and Monday, and I'd like to know what you think. And if you listen to this as a podcast or watching this back on YouTube, I learn better from, I always read all of the comments, so I'd like to know what you think, how you feel about it, let me know. That's how I can learn. If you like what I do, please help support the show by joining Patreon, and thanks very much for tuning in. See you soon.